That feeling, you know the one, that knot in your stomach maybe, when something you poured your heart into just doesn't work out. Maybe it was that big presentation, you know, the one you prepped for ages, lost sleep over.
Yeah.
And it just landed flat. We've all been there. It stings, feels like a dead end. But what if? What if that moment, that failure isn't the end of the story? What if it's actually maybe a gift, holding a clue to something better?
It really flips the script, doesn't it? Because failure, wow, that word carries so much baggage.
Yeah.
But that's what we're doing in this deep dives. We're going to look at it completely differently. We'll pull from, ancient philosophy, modern psychology, real stories to see how these setbacks can actually be fuel for growth, for learning, for resilience, really.
Yeah, exactly. Our mission today is simple. Give you, listening right now, a new way to look at those moments. Think about that presentation again. What if it wasn't a burden, but a building block? So, let's properly dig in.
Okay, first things first, this whole idea of failure. Our culture has a pretty harsh take on it, usually. Can you sort of unpack that for us, like the basic definition, and how did it get so personal?
Well, at its core, failure just means, not meeting a desirable or intended objective. Simple enough. But something really interesting happened historically, especially in the US around the 19th century. Before that, failure, like, say, going bankrupt, was seen more as an event, something that happened to you. But then it started shifting. It became less about the event and more about you. It morphed into a character trait.
Wow, okay, so not the business failed, but that person is a failure.
Exactly. It implies something's wrong with your character, deficient somehow. And that puts all the blame, all the weight right onto the individual. It becomes part of who you are, not just something you experienced. And that feeds right into what some psychologists call all or nothing thinking, where it's either total success or complete disaster, black or white. How much does that trap us? Seeing things in just those two extremes.
Oh, hugely. It's easy to fall into, but it's just not reality, is it?
Yeah.
If you look really closely at any big success story, it's usually full of, setbacks, failures along the way.
Yeah.
And the flip side is true too. Even in a failure, there are often little successes, things learned, data points. The trick is to actively look for them, to sort of mine for the evidence that contradicts that big negative I failed story we tell ourselves. Find the gray areas.
But the danger is when it goes beyond the event, like you said, and becomes global labeling. That thought, I am a failure, that feels heavy. And you mentioned it can become a kind of self-fulfilling prophecy. How does that work?
It's powerful stuff. Once that label sticks in your mind, your thoughts, your feelings, even your actions start to line up with it. You start acting like a failure because you believe you are one. It dictates your choices.
So how do you even start to fight that internal narrative?
Well, this is where looking back can be incredibly helpful. Ancient philosophy, believe it or not, has some amazing tools. Take the Stoics. Their starting point was basically, try not to be surprised by setbacks. Seneca had this great line, nothing happens to the wise man contrary to his expectation. They expected things could go wrong.
Right, but that's not about being a pessimist, is it? It's more strategic. It's that practice negative visualization, thinking through what could go wrong.
Exactly. It's not about dwelling on the bad stuff. It's about taking the sting out of it, removing the shock. If you've already considered the possibility, maybe even the worst case scenario, and thought about how you'd handle it, then if it happens, well, you're prepared.
It's like you've already run a mental simulation, so you're calmer, more ready to act, not just react.
Precisely. And the Stoics went even further. They didn't really talk about failure. They talked about outcomes. Marcus Aurelius put it brilliantly. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way.
Okay, what stands in the way becomes the way. That's powerful. So that disastrous presentation, that setback, it's actually an opportunity to practice something.
Yes, an opportunity to practice virtue. Patience, maybe. Managing your temper if things got heated. Reevaluating your whole approach. The obstacle itself isn't just something to get over. It's the path to getting better. Like lifting weights, the resistance is what builds the muscle.
So you use the difficulty itself.
You use it. You keep asking yourself, situation by situation. Okay, this happened. What am I going to do with this? How can this make me better? It's not an overnight fix. It's iterative. Each time you do it, you build that mental muscle, that instinct. It becomes more habitual.
So for you listening, maybe the takeaway here is you can't change the past. That presentation is done. Wasted time, maybe. Out of your control. Your power is right now. What you do now with what you learned, even if it was painful. Okay, so the Stoics help us build this sort of mental armor, expecting challenges. But what about actually turning those challenges into fuel for the future? That sounds like where modern psychology comes in, maybe with the growth mindset. How does that fit?
Yeah, it's a beautiful compliment. Many people know Carol Dweck's work on the growth mindset, this idea that your talents aren't fixed, they can be developed. But the key part for us today is how it reframes mistakes. In the growth mindset, a mistake isn't proof you're no good. It's just data, information. It shifts the goal from looking smart or avoiding mistakes to actually learning and getting better. You put your energy into the process.
You see it everywhere, don't you? Learning to ride a bike. You fall off. Lots. But you don't usually say, well, I'm clearly a failure at cycling and give up forever. You get back on, you adjust, you practice. Even top athletes, they're constantly training, making mistakes in practice, refining things. Or Einstein. Genius, right? But he struggled with math early on, especially kept working on problems right until the end. Mistakes are just part of it, a necessary part.
Absolutely. And this connects really well to another key psychological idea, self-compassion. This is about how you treat yourself when you do stumble. Are you harsh, critical, or are you kind, understanding? It means recognizing that struggling, suffering, messing up, that's part of being human. We all go through it. And be mindful of that struggle without judging yourself too harshly.
So it's more than just feeling better after a failure. It actually changes how you see the failure itself.
Exactly. It helps you shift from seeing failure as this huge personal threat, something terrifying to avoid, to seeing it more as an opportunity for growth. It creates a bit of space for curiosity instead of just self-blame. Like, okay, that didn't work. What can I learn here?
And there's research on this, right? Showing a link.
Oh, definitely. Studies show that people with higher self-compassion are much more likely to believe that failures are learning opportunities. And they're less likely to see failures as something awful that has to be avoided at all costs. It builds that inner resilience, that mental and, dare I say, spiritual strength.
That makes sense. And it's different from just having high self-esteem, isn't it? Because sometimes protecting high self-esteem might make you avoid challenges, avoid the risk of failing.
That's a really important distinction. Self-esteem can be fragile. You might avoid risks to keep feeling good about yourself. Self-compassion, though, gives you the safety net to take those risks. It says, okay, even if I fall flat on my face, I can handle it. I can be kind to myself and learn from it. It fosters openness to the whole experience, good and bad.
Okay, this is all incredibly insightful. We've got the Stoic perspective, the growth mindset, self-compassion, changing how we think and feel about failure. But let's get really practical. For someone listening, maybe still smarting from that big presentation that bombed, how do they actually do this? How do you turn the insight into action? What are the steps to actually pull lessons out of a mistake?
All right, let's bridge that gap. It's actually quite systematic. We can think of it as a maybe 5-step guide to really learn from mistakes efficiently. Works for almost anything. Step 1, accept, admit, and embrace. You have to take responsibility, honestly look at what happened, but crucially, reframe it. It's not about shame. Shame keeps you stuck. It's about seeing it as data, an opportunity. So for the presentation, okay, it didn't go as planned. I own my part. Now what? Step 2, identify the mistake. And be specific. Don't just say it was bad. What exactly went wrong? Was it the content? Was it how you answered questions? Did you misread the room? You need to pinpoint the what. Step 3, identify why it was a mistake. Dig deeper now. What were the root causes? What were the consequences? Ask why multiple times. Why did I misread the room? Because I didn't do enough audience research. Why not? Because I ran out of time. Why? Poor planning. You get to the core issue. Step 4, identify how to fix it. Develop a concrete strategy. What will you do differently next time to avoid that specific issue? This needs conscious effort. If it was, say, getting flustered during Q&A, maybe the fix involves practice or learning some breathing techniques for staying calm. For our listener, maybe it's rehearsing out loud more. And step 5, arguably the most critical, apply that knowledge. All the analysis is pointless if you don't actually use it. Next time a similar situation comes up, you consciously implement your fix. This is how you break cycles, stop repeating mistakes, and actually improve. Build that resilience.
That's a really clear framework. And it feels like step 5 is where the real change happens. But it's not instant, right? It's iterative, like you said before. It takes practice. It's okay to not nail it the first time you try this process. It's like, learning to juggle, maybe. You drop the balls. A lot.
Exactly. Each drop is a tiny lesson. You don't quit juggling after one drop.
Right. You pick them up, adjust slightly. The goal isn't perfection right away. It's just consistent effort, being mindful about it. That builds real strength over time. Psychological, emotional strength.
And if you zoom out, this process is absolutely vital in fields like, say, entrepreneurship, or any kind of innovation, really. Starting something new is always risky. It's fraught with possible pitfalls, as they say. Failure isn't just possible, it's often probable, maybe even necessary.
Yeah, you see it with famous innovators all the time. Richard Branson, huge successes, obviously, but also things like Virgin Cola didn't quite work out, or Steve Jobs getting kicked out of Apple. He started NextT, which wasn't a runaway success on its own.
But the technology developed at NextT was crucial for Apple's turnaround when they bought it and he came back. It became the foundation for Mac OS X.
Exactly. So those failures, they weren't dead ends at all. They were springboards. They provided lessons, technology, new directions.
And that's a key point.
Yeah.
These moments of failure, they force you to pause, to really take stock. You have to reflect on what you're doing, your strategies. It often prompts changes, pivots that you just wouldn't have considered if everything was going smoothly. It's a forced correction.
Which leads perfectly to this idea of the gift of failure. I read about an engineer, Morgan, whose project failed quite badly. And through coaching, she shifted her thinking from, I am a failure, to, we had a failure. Like a science experiment gone wrong, like a bad batch of cookies.
That reframing is so powerful and it depersonalizes it.
Totally. And because she saw it as an experiment, she could look objectively, identify design flaws, bring different teams together in a new way, and actually innovate. Her baking analogy helped her professionally, and probably helped her well-being too.
And that leads to making failure discussable. That's huge for teams. There's another example, a director named Dan. He learned to build psychological safety. That means creating an environment where people feel safe to take risks, voice concerns, admit mistakes.
Without fearing they'll be blamed or punished.
Precisely. Think about a surgical team. You want the most junior person to feel safe speaking up if they see something wrong, right? Because the goal is the patient's safety, not protecting egos. When you have that safety, you get honesty. You get real learning. You move away from covering things up and towards fixing them together.
So let's bring it all together. For you listening, whether it's that presentation still nagging at you or some other setback, what's the big picture? We've seen failure isn't just some annoying roadblock. It's actually woven into the fabric of learning, of growing, of innovating in work, in life, in your own well-being.
Yeah, let's quickly recap those key takeaways. First, challenge that old harsh story about failure. It's an outcome, not who you are. Second, try the stoic approach. Expect bumps in the road. See them as chances to practice strength, patience, whatever virtue is needed. Mentally prepare. Third, lean into that growth mindset and practice self-compassion. See challenges as learning fuel, not threats. Shift from proving yourself to improving yourself. Fourth, use those practical steps. Accept. Identify the what, identify the why, figure out the fix, and most importantly, apply it next time. Make the lesson stick. And finally, remember that failure can be an amazing catalyst for reflection, for innovation, for building that deeper psychological and maybe even spiritual strength, leading to greater success down the line.
It reminds me of that great Henry Ford quote, failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently.
So here's a final thought to mull over. Think about a recent failure in your own life, that presentation maybe, or something else. What if it wasn't really a closed door? What if it was actually a hidden map? What are the lessons waiting there for you? And maybe more importantly, what new strengths, what new paths are now open to you because it happened? What could you only learn through that specific experience?